You all remember this. Ronald Reagan had just become president. We had just gone through the Iran hostage crisis. Interest rates were, approaching 19%. Unemployment was 13%. The country was demoralized. The Dow was trading at 800. Volume was maybe 30 million shares a day. Today we do 30 million shares in about 3 seconds, right? Then it was 30 million shares a day, but it was all pen and paper and all that stuff. But the market was just kind of chugging along. Yet, for me at 19, it was just an incredible, incredible place. And so I worked for summer 1980. I went back to school. I came back summer 81, worked for the same guy. I went back to school, came back summer 82. 1982 was very interesting because at that point, interest rates were even higher. They were 20%. And if you remember, you could go to the bank, you could take your money and go to the bank and put it in a CD and earn 20% guaranteed and sleep at night, no risk. So why would anybody put their money in the market? There was inherent risk there. There were no guarantees. And so they didn't. They put their money in the bank. 19%, 20%, hello? Not too hard to figure out, right? But Paul Volcker was Fed chair. And so there was, inflation was now running at 13%, 12%, like that. Unemployment was still high, and he was trying to break the back of inflation. Reagan was trying to revitalize the economy, blah, blah, blah. And so it was Tuesday, August 17th. And unannounced, Paul Volcker at the time was Fed chairman. Now listen, also simmering under the surface was the Mexican peso crisis, was the Latin American debt crisis. Argentina was going to default on their loans to the United States. And so there was all this other macro stuff going on. And Paul Volcker made a surprise announcement on the Tuesday morning. It was about 8:30. The Dow was trading at 790. Today it's trading at 16,800, right? And the announcement was that the Fed was cutting interest rates 2 percentage points. 2 percentage points is 10%. It's a massive cut in interest rates. Nobody expected it. And all of a sudden, the phones lit up, right? Every phone, you could hear it. The place was shaking. Now, understand, there was no internet, there was no Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, there was no television, there was no radio on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. So we had no idea what just happened. All we knew was that every phone rang. But that was by design, because on the floor, when you were representing a customer on the floor, you were supposed to respond to supply and demand only, right? You had to be able to read the crowd and respond. My brain wasn't supposed to be clouded with all this other stuff. I was only supposed to be able to react to supply and demand. And so therefore, when the news came out and every phone lit up, I will never in a million years forget it. And I picked up the phone and one of my customers said, "Did you see what happened yet?" "No, I didn't see what happened. Tell me what happened," because I didn't see what happened. So he tells you what happened, and all of a sudden, buy 10,000, buy 50,000. Every order was a buy order. And they were all at the market. I was like, shaking, right? Because I was so excited. Not shaking because I was there, shaking. I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest place in the world, right? And so the market opened. And I remember what I said. On Monday, the Dow was up or down $1, and we traded 30 million shares. On Tuesday, the Dow was up 4.5%, the equivalent of 35 points, but that was a huge move when the Dow traded 700. And the volume quadrupled. We went from 30 million to 138 million shares. All by hand. Now listen, and it looks even different because today you saw the main one was all renovated. But the boot spaces used to be these long, narrow boot spaces. Just enough. I had my desk was just as wide as my shoulders. The guy standing next to me literally stood shoulder to shoulder. This guy stood shoulder to shoulder over here. I had this much space. I had a counter that was this tall, no sitting. A counter that was this tall. I had a big steel phone with the buttons. The buttons. I had 2 of them stacked on top of each other. That was it. A pen. And I had a buy pad, a sell pad, a quote pad, and a cancellation pad. That was the extent of my office, right? And So the phone rang, the place just went bonkers, and so we would just all day long, it was nonstop, it was truly unbelievable to have been there on that day. So, the market takes off. It was the beginning of what we know is the greatest bull market of our lifetime, right? So it took off, it did that, it was exciting, that was really the beginning of it, and then interest rates continued to come down and the market